Hey, today I'm sharing 10 top writing tips from best-selling authors. The truth is that what works for one writer isn't going to work for every writer. So one way to help yourself is to explore all the different ways you can find your own success to go from amateur to best-selling author yourself. In this video, I'm going to share my favorite strategies from these best-selling authors. Our first tip is from the author Taylor Jenkins Reid, author of one of my favorite novels, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, among others. Taylor's advice is to make a schedule. If you actually crunch the numbers, you take your book from being something nebulous and scary to something that's finite and achievable. And so I love this tip from Taylor, and it's something I tell all the writers that I work with. Tip number 2 is from Britt Bennett, author of another favorite novel of mine, The Vanishing Half. And Britt's tip is to not define your work by word count. A lot of work goes into crafting a story that doesn't necessarily happen on the page. You know, some days you might blaze through 1,000 words, other days you might be letting a scene marinate in your mind. But both of these things are equally important for moving your story forward. Yes, keep up with your writing schedule, but remember that any time spent working on your story, however that manifests, is time well spent, even if it doesn't result in word count. Tip number 3 is from author Rumaan Alam, author of Rich and Pretty and That Kind of Mother. And his tip is to write wherever you want. I love this one because, like it or not, our lives are unpredictable. And if you work full-time or raising a family or something else, it can sometimes be impossible or feel impossible to find time to actually sit at a desk and write with no distractions. So what do? Write wherever you are, right? In your notes app on your phone, right? In a notebook, right? Wherever else works for you. I have someone in my program who is a doctor at a hospital and just finished her entire novel, first draft of her novel, on her phone, which she wrote on her notes app in between seeing patients. So if she can do that, so can you, right wherever you are. Tip number 4 is from Adam Silvera, author of They Both Die at the End and History is All You Left Me. And his tip is to let your characters be imperfect. When we work on a project for a long time, it can be easy to feel very emotionally attached to our characters. You can even feel that way even if we just got started telling their story. But it's an important thing to remember that the stories that will speak to us as human beings and reveal something greater than just the setting and the events are the ones that show us imperfect characters who make mistakes, who are faced with dilemmas and are asked to make difficult choices just like we are in life. Letting your characters make mistakes and letting them have humanity will make for a more complex and relatable story. Tip number 5 is from Maggie O'Farrell, author of Hamnet, and the tip is that you don't have to start at the beginning. Yeah, that's right. If you want, you can literally start telling your story in the middle or at the end. Doesn't matter. You'll get back to the beginning or whatever parts you skipped later. It's totally up to you what order you want to get the words on the page. And giving yourself this breathing room to get your story out however you want can help the words flow faster and help you overcome paralysis. Before I share these next 5 incredible tips from best-selling authors with you, I just want to thank you for watching and let you know that before I had published my 3 novels with HarperCollins, I was a former lawyer trying to publish a novel that had taken me 6 years to write after dozens of false starts and scrapped drafts. But one day something clicked, and 3 books later, now I'm a published author and writing coach here to share with you what I learned along my journey so you can streamline your path to writing your dream book and save yourself years of the trial and error that I went through. On this channel, you'll learn how to actually get your book written and how to become professional and how to do it joyfully, because writing doesn't have to be scary and painful. It should be fun most of the time. So I'm here to help you make writing fun again and to get your best book done. So please like this video and subscribe to this channel because I have plenty of tips and tricks that I'm excited to share with you. All right, let's get back to these tips. Tip number 6 is from John Niven, author of Kill Your Friends. And John's tip is to give yourself space. Ever get that cringe feeling when reading back something you just wrote, or ever read it back and feel like it's the best thing anyone's ever written? I've experienced both. The truth is, when you've just put something down on paper, trying to gauge whether or not it's good is difficult to do objectively. You're prone to either think it's absolutely perfect or absolutely terrible. But when you give yourself some time away, you can come back and you will have had enough distance to see it more objectively. Emotions have faded, they've subsided, and you can really find some clarity around what needs to change in your story, what's good and what's bad. So I love this tip. All right, tip number 7 is from Lee Weatherly, author of Broken Sky. And Lee's tip is to write what interests you, not what you think others want to read. Oh, this is so important. Ultimately, you're the one who's tasking yourself with writing something that's gonna be about 70,000 words or longer. Are you gonna be able to sustain a story of 70,000 words if what you're writing about is what you think other people wanna read and not the story that you wanna tell? Trust me, I've tried that before and it doesn't work. Let yourself take you to the stories that you're interested in and write that. Your writing will be better and you'll have a better time. Nothing is more of a slog than to read something a writer wasn't interested in writing. Tip 8 is from Maggie Stiefvater, author of The Raven Cycle. And her tip is to turn no into not yet. Whether you've just started perusing your passion or you've been at this for years, it's easy to get discouraged, especially when you hear a lot of no's, whether that's rejections from agents, cruel for the fun of it writing instructors, or peers who don't know when to keep their mouth shut. But remind yourself that this journey is a process. And just because you didn't do what you hoped to this time doesn't mean you won't ever do it. A no doesn't have to be the end. And it shouldn't be, because we're all gonna get a lot of no's. It's just part of the process. Tip number 9 is from Stephen King himself, author of a million stories that you know about, including Carrie, The Shining, the Dark Tower series, and others. And this tip is to don't get bogged down with the details. When you're first starting out, it can be tempting to get lost in research, whether you want your story to be realistic or whether you're writing fantasy with a lot of world building. There's a temptation to be accurate or wanting to flesh out every little detail. But research can often derail us from what should be our primary goal in the first draft, finishing the first draft, getting that version of the story down on paper. And in that version, it's okay if details are not perfect the first time around. You have revisions for that. So I love this tip. Our last tip is from Emerald Fennell, author of Monsters and a screenwriter of the film Promising Young Woman. And this tip is to write whatever you want. There are lots of reasons why we might be hesitant to get something down on paper. You wonder if it'll be good. Maybe it'll be terrible. Maybe you'll write something that might offend your friends or family, or maybe you worry it won't be what you imagined in your head. And honestly, it probably won't be. And that's okay. It's normal. But you can't write your book without writing your book. And especially for a first draft, there are very few people who will likely see that version anyway. So give yourself the freedom to write whatever you want. And remember that you'll revisit it and you'll revise it when the time comes. Your future writer self can do that. So trust that person. So best-selling or not, how much can you really make on your book? It's a good question and one I get a lot because there's very little data out there. Unless you're a publishing industry insider, it's actually a really hard answer to find. I made it my mission to find out. I compiled data from over 1,400 published authors and found average and median book advances based on all kinds of metrics, including genre, whether it was their first book or not, whether they had an agent or not, and who their publisher was. I've put all of this information into a free workshop, which you can watch right now. It's really good. I'm talking pie charts, graphs, the whole deal. Click the link below to find out everything you want to know about current book advances and what you can realistically expect to make on your book. If you're serious about becoming a professional author, this really is a must-watch. You're not going to find this data laid out this way anywhere else. So click below and you can watch this totally free workshop right now.